Hello, I'm Jenya Delima. Welcome to Writing and Editing, the author-focused podcast that takes a whole person approach to everything related to both writing and editing. Humor can be used to help us build empathy and understanding for characters in a story, even when their lives are incredibly different from ours. But how can we do this effectively instead of letting joke after joke overshadow the story's emotional core and main message? Here to share how he did this in his novel Deadpan is Richard Walter. Thanks so much for being here today, Richard.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you so much.
hmm Why do you think humor is so effective at helping us connect with others?
Wow, what a great question. There's an answer. I was a professor for 40 years. I'm retired from that now, but I'm a writer, and the writers never retire. And the one answer you're never allowed to give at a university to any question is, and it's probably the truest answer there is to any question. And here it is. It's just three words. I don't know. But that said, I will say that there is in the human condition there is the opportunity for great joy and fulfillment and affirmation and good things like that, but also the opposite of that, frustration and disappointment and heartache and grief. Unfortunately, there are billions of people around the world who never have the former. That is to say, they never get the good stuff.
Mm,
But everybody has heartache and grief and disappointment. I am fortunate and privileged over my life to have crossed paths with some of the most successful, richest, movie stars and major Hollywood figures and others all around the world. And there's not one of them who has escaped, disappointment and darkness. And I think humor helps us address that.
mm,
Um, I really think it's biological. We really need stories, and we need in those stories. The single most important thing is passion, is feeling. That's
mhm,
really what it's all about. If you go past a movie theater and suddenly uh, the door is open, the movie has just ended, and everybody streams out, and you happen to notice that everybody in the group is sobbing. They're just
ah,
weeping and crying. Would you say to you, wouldn't it seem logical for you to say to yourself that they're really upset about that movie? I want to find out what movie that is in so that I don't see it and I don't have. No, the opposite is the case, isn't it? You get in line right then and there to see that movie. Art is all about feeling. It's all about emotion.
mhm,
And I've so people who are drawn to do this kind of thing are going to be emotional and passionate people. I've never met anybody who considered themselves a writer who or any kind of artist in any corner of the film industry or any other creative enterprise who didn't consider themselves to be really, really passionate people. And the object is to share that passion, to get that passion to be experienced by the audience that's reading your book or watching your movie or listening to your opera or whatever.
mhm. Well, speaking about emotion, what are some of the emotions that humor can bring about? Because we might think of the obvious, it makes us laugh, it makes us maybe feel lighthearted, but can it make us feel other emotions?
Well, humor is all about text and subtext. It's about relieving stress. The human condition is a stressful enterprise, and we need escape valves to be able to navigate these treacherous waters. That's what I think it is. I think it's really biological. It's not just an add-on or for fun, though it can be great fun.
Mhm,
But it really is a people that doesn't get its art, its dramatic narratives in particular, will become undernourished spiritually and culturally in the way that bodies become warped and distended and misshapen when they're not properly nourished.
Well, moving to your book, can you explain why your main character in Deadpan might not have been as likable if humor hadn't been used?
Well, again, I don't think that characters, protagonists need to be likable.
hmm
Um, It's funny. There's a
Or maybe interesting enough that we continue to read about him rather than being so offended by some of his viewpoints that we put the book down.
well, again, if you look at the great narratives in the theater pieces, uh, audience-oriented expression like plays, and more recently in history, the last 100 years or so, 150 years maybe,
Hmm.
uh, movies, you're going to see that they're not upstanding. The characters that get the focus are horribly flawed.
Mm.
Oedipus kills his father. We all know what he does to his mother. Medea murders her own children in a jealous rage against her the philandering, faithless husband, Jason. Macbeth murders his own king, who's a guest in his house, and there's no noble purpose in it. He just wants to be king himself. The witches told him that he could be king. Richard III kills his own nephews. He doesn't even suspect them of any wrongdoing. They're just in his way. Hamlet ends with nine corpses on the
Oh my
stage.
gosh,
Some
yes.
of them have run through, been poisoned, and others run through on swords. Nobody wants to see the village of the happy, nice people where everybody gets along. It gives us the opportunity to rehearse these emotions, to experience these emotions in a simulation where you can't get hurt. So that in real life, when this happens to you, you've had the experience before, you've had the feeling before, you got through it before, you'll get through it this time. So to no small extent, our lives often depend upon it.
Hmm. Well, going back to your book, can you tell us the importance of tone and also how tone influences the humor that you use?
Yeah, well, I don't think you can really choose your tone. You are your tone, the way you speak, the way you write. What you want to concentrate upon is story. In Deadpan, a if I was still on campus as a professor, I retired from that. I would say it's an homage to Kafka. But since I'm now retired from the university, I'll say I stole it from Kafka. There's a, there's a Kafka story that most people know, many people know, called The Metamorphosis, in which a
Woke up and I was an insect.
man wakes up one morning to discover that he's a bug, a beetle, an insect, a cockroach, depending on the translation. And I thought, what else could you wake up as? How about a fern? That doesn't sound very exciting. What about a rhinoceros? There actually was a play about a guy who turns into a rhinoceros. But I thought, how about you suddenly discover that you're the most successful stand-up comedian?
Mm.
And so many comedians are Jews that I thought I'd make it a Jewish comedian, and therefore the guy who gets transformed into that Jewish comedian is something of an anti-Semite. He's not an arsonist, a rapist, a murderer, but he has some of the beliefs that so many of us have about one group or another. And that, to no small extent, is the point. Though I was not trying to make the point. I don't think you can write a book if you're trying to make a point. You have to just be trying to tell a story. But if it's a good story, you look back at it and you'll see that there is a point. And the point here is that we all need to examine our own soft core bigotry. The problem is scores of millions of people who go along with these things. It's the going along that gets us into trouble. There are always going to be maniacs like Hitler in the world. What's frightening is that tens of millions, scores of millions of cultured, literate, educated, privileged, advantaged citizens of Germany, they went along with that. And I do look back at myself and wonder, kind of rue the things I've gone along with here and there. It just we live for convenience, and the cost is severe. This guy wanders out onto the stage. There's the audience. They're cheering. They seem to know him under some other name, and when he tries to describe who he is, they speak along with him. Apparently, he's this comedian whose signature routine is to claim he's the guy that he believes he really is. And I think maybe we're all doing that to some extent.
Mm.
I was told Dead Man is my sixth published book. It's my third novel, and I do have three nonfiction books from Penguin Random House on screenwriting. And the last one, which was published 15 years ago, I'm just told has had a deal now, an international deal from the Russians. I've gotten a contract for a Russian translation. The Mandarin edition in China is selling like crazy. It's at the top of.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm not telling you about this to brag, though. It's something to brag about. But I don't see myself as somebody. I've never seen myself as somebody who's going to have a book translated into Chinese. It's selling like 1,000 copies a month.
Oh, nice.
And how do we know we are who we are?
Mm.
Haven't we all had dreams that we thought were real? And when we woke up, we were usually glad to realize it's a dream because it's not usually
Mm-hmm.
not a good dream. Well, how do we know that this isn't a dream? And if it is a dream, why put up with what we put up with? Why stop at the red lights? Why pay your taxes and so on? There's a lot of problems these days, I think, distinguishing between reality and illusion. And I think that the movies help us do that. We need creative narratives, dramatic narratives, as I say, to nourish our souls and to kind of help us navigate the actual world.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us how humor also nourishes your soul when you're just reading about it, or when humor is used on the page versus if you see a stand-up comedian in person or you watch a special on TV?
Well, it's funny. I think humor is, especially humor, is all about not what you say, but what you don't say.
Ah, yes.
And it allows us to say kinds of things that are otherwise difficult to
Right.
say.
Taboo almost. Yeah.
Yeah. The key, I think, is the same as in, but even more demanding in all dramatic narratives, and that is efficiency, economy. People ask me, what is the biggest mistake that writers make?
Mm.
And the
Oh, I
answer
was going to
is,
ask you that. No, I don't have to.
well, here it is. The biggest mistake that writers make. We write too much. There's just they're too long, too many pages, on and on. Especially in screenwriting.
Mm.
Here's a description of a waterfall in a screenplay. Waterfall. If you talk about the way the light reflects prismatically rainbows on the spume and how the moisture seeps across the craggy granite rock face, blah, 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 you may think you're writing great literature, but the reader, she's thinking, he's wasting my time.
Mm.
Uh, what's happening here? Uh, Also, screenwriters are compelled to really work with just two kinds of information in a novel. A novel's easier to write than a screenplay. For one thing, it's longer, and longer is easier. There's a famous letter from Hemingway to Maxwell Perkins'
Oh, I
legendary
love
editor.
Maxwell Perkins. Yeah.
Well, he writes this 9-page letter from Cuba. I think he was working on Old Man and the Sea.
Mm.
And at the end of the letter, he says, "Well, that's about it for now, Max. Please forgive me for writing such a long letter. I didn't have the time to write a short one." Writing is not about, and art is not about putting stuff up, especially storytelling. It's about taking stuff away that's already to find something that's already there. I never knew a writer who wasn't surprised by something that a character seemed to invent on her own to say or to do. Now, in my later phase, I think it's not so much about finding getting the stuff out of the way, yes, but it's not about so much finding the stuff as letting the stuff find you. And so what you do is you kind of have an outline. I do think you need to prepare, but then you got to crumple up that outline and throw it away and see how things develop. And some stuff will develop that's really good, and much will develop that's not. Hemingway, in a letter to he got a letter from Scott Fitzgerald.
Well, they both worked with Maxwell Perkins. So, yeah.
Well, he said that Hemingway said to Fitzgerald, every day I write a sentence that is timeless and eternal and poetic and beautiful. And I write 10,000 sentences that are stupid and useless and idiotic and clumsy and klutzy. It's about throwing away.
Mm.
Uh, Writers mature as writers, I believe, when they learn not merely uh, to tolerate throwing away, but to welcome throwing away, to be glad to get rid of a something that didn't really move the story forward. The challenge is to have every single thing move the story forward. And I think that comedy, the two hardest things in all of entertainment, I think, are singing and stand-up comedy. It's funny or it ain't. Sometimes it's pitchy or it's not. There's no two ways about it. You can sort of fake your way through an action adventure thing, eh, but not comedy. Uh, there's nothing more embarrassing than comedy that's falling flat. It's a tall order, and again, it requires efficiency, and yet at the same time, it needs spontaneity. It's really a schizophrenic enterprise. You need to be completely subjective and totally objective. Not only are those different qualities, but they're the opposite of each other. And you have to be all of that at kind of at the same time. This is why they pay writers so much when they pay us at all.
Well, before we end, do you have any comedians that you would recommend listeners either listen to or watch?
Wow, what a great question. The comedians who've moved me the most are, from my childhood, the early television stars like Jackie Gleason and Sid Caesar. I will say it's a long time. It has to be near the end of his career and his life. But Steve Martin, I saw him. He was actually produced by somebody who was a schoolmate of mine at the film school.
Hmm.
We went. He was the second. He was completely unknown in opening for a well-known musical act, and he just burnt the place to the ground. He was really, really brilliantly funny.
Mhm.
Um, wow, what a good question. I don't really keep up. I'm not a movie buff. I have a picture of Lenny Bruce on my wall. I think that he's one of my heroes, and it's amazing how relevant he is today after all of these years. He died in the 60s. He's an inspiration to me. Otherwise, I laugh at most comedians who are good enough to get onto TV. Usually,
Mhm.
are able to make me laugh at one thing or another.
All right. Well, thank you for such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate your attention and consideration. God bless.
Aw, same. And thank you for listening, and be sure to check out the show notes for additional information about today's episode. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this one, please don't forget to subscribe to the show, and I hope you'll listen again next week. Thanks again.
Thank you. Take care now. Bye bye.